Hello everybody and welcome to Introduction to Java. Well, this is one of the most exciting tutorials to host for myself because Java is currently my favorite language. Others were like, "Ooh, Java. How so? Are you sure you're a human being?" Because Java is that language that made a lot of people quit coding or programming because of its difficulty to grasp and to understand. But what else, I got you back. I am gonna try to break it down and explain it as simple as possible. And yeah, everybody can actually follow through this tutorial. You don't have to have any coding background in order to follow through this tutorial. All you just need is just the will to learn and determination. Also, you should have the guts to not give up because you don't always get things done on the first try, right? You have to try and try and try. You try and fail and try and fail until you win, right? Cool. So, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce to you your host. Well, this guy is one of the most happiest guys alive. He's known as Mr. Happiness due to him always being happy. It doesn't really matter what day, is just happy each and every time. So yeah, I will try to keep these tutorials as simple and as nice and exciting as possible because this has to be an exciting journey. And coding is fun for me. Coding is fun. I just love coding. But enough of that, and let's get started. I do hope you guys are ready, and I do encourage that you also create a bit of schedule where you plan your things. So for Java tutorials, we will be releasing them. I will be releasing them on Friday. Why did I say we? Okay, maybe there's gonna be a team that is gonna join me soon, but for now I'm a lone wolf. So they will be released each and every Friday at 11 a.m. hopefully. But I'll keep my word and keep my schedule because I'm also working on my own schedule. Scheduled for this one because yeah, most people want to learn Java, others want to learn Python, and these are the languages that are on the list of the tutorials that I will be hosting here on YouTube. But yeah, enough of that. Let's dive into the tutorial actually. So what we're going to talk about is the installation. So during this installation, I am not going to demonstrate how to install, but I'm going to show you where to get tools. What I recommend is that you go online and find a tutorial video demonstrating how to install for your operating system. So the reason why I want to avoid that is because I am currently working on Linux. It's Pop! OS version 2022.04. It's not easy to demonstrate installation for different operating system unless if I of course do the VirtualBox, which is just gonna abuse my memory because yeah, the PC that I'm working on doesn't have that much memory. It's a 4 gig RAM PC, so I won't allow myself to do that, otherwise I will be seeing some smoke coming out of my PC. But if you guys do need help in terms of installation, just leave a comment under the comment section or send me an email, which I'm gonna drop under the comment section. Then I will use my 8 gig RAM PC, which I don't have right now, but yeah, I do have access to it on a daily basis, just that it's not where I stay, but where I study. So yeah, I'll try to just do that because there I can easily just do a VirtualBox and just use whatever operating system I want to use. But rather than that, I might recommend some good videos. So just leave a comment, and then I will reply as much as I can when I get time because I'm quite a busy man. I'm also a student who's working on projects, and yeah, it gets intense. So yeah, I'll try, but yeah, enough of that. In terms of the coding syntax, we'll start with variables, how you define variables, and the rules for naming your variables. This topic will lead us to the discussion of data types. So we'll explore not all data types, but some. Reason being that this is the first tutorial and I don't want to just overwhelm you guys with too much information. I want it to be nice and simple introduction that allows you to grasp all these, because this is the fundamental concepts which you need in order for you to successfully understand Java, or master Java, should I say. So do take this serious and do pay attention, and also do ask questions, not just for me, but also for yourself, as to why we're doing this, and also there are some concepts which I'm not going to explain. For instance, a class. I am not going to cover what a class is, the words you should be seeing, static, void, string, args. I am not going to explain that on this tutorial. There's going to be a tutorial where we start, or the journey where we begin with object orientation properly. So that's where I will start to explain what a class is, and then it's going to be breaking down all the keywords or all the words that you're going to be seeing. In this tutorial, what I'm going to do is I am going to try to explain just the more of a template for this tutorial. It's a template that you need. It's more like setting up the environment. So I'm going to show you how the environment is set without fully explaining the concepts. I will explain that in the future tutorials because I don't want to confuse people. I want it to be a simple to learn journey that is not filled with lots of things, because if I start with the discussion of classes and classes and objects without starting to discuss the most fundamental concepts, the variables and data types, the conditions, you might find yourself getting lost. So what else, we will get to a point where we start talking about the deep concepts, which yeah, they are on another level in terms of difficulty, but what else, we will be able to cover them. So we will talk about how to display data on screen. So we'll access the methods, right? I'll discuss the 3 methods in this tutorial. Yeah, and show you how you use all of them. Some one of the method you have seen, okay, both of these methods you have seen in a different programming language if you have been coding in Python or in C. There's one method which is from C, and then there's one method which is from Python, which you might have seen in Python. Yeah, and then we can talk about displaying and not talk about getting the input. And again, with this one, there is a class which we use, right? I'm not going to discuss much of classes, I repeat, but I will talk about classes and define what a class is when we move forward. Cool. So installation time, right? Let's go. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna go to Oracle. It's oracle.com/. I just want to straightly go to the downloads page without confusing you with all the distractions that are going to be there on the page, because you're only here for coding. Though you're going to come back to the site later on to get full understanding of the concepts of Java. They do have proper full documentation of all the classes you have in Java. And yeah, but just because this is a simple tutorial, we'll get to a part where we get to that. But then if you already know about this, well, you can just do that. But then for those who are new, please don't feel like you are in the wrong place. You are in the very right place. Yes, it's filled with those who know coding, those who've been coding, and then those who don't know coding at all. So what else? I am gonna make sure that this is covering everyone as much as possible. Cool. So what you're gonna do is just go to Java, right? And then you wanna go to technologies, technologies. Then you wanna go to downloads, right? Then you press enter. There we go. It's going to Java downloads. Oracle. Let's just give it a moment or two. And there we go. Right? As I mentioned, it's better to go online and you yeah, go online and check what you need in order to get started with Java, right? So as you see here, what you have is Java 18 and Java 17, which are available, right? And then they discuss a bit about what's what. So basically what you want to download is a Java development kit. Currently you see we are on 18. This is Java 18, and then you'll see the operating systems that are there. There's Linux, there's macOS, and there's Windows, right? And then these are the downloads. If you're Windows, you go for Windows, and then it will give you the installer for Windows, which is so it's only 64-bit that is available. So I'm assuming that 32-bit is not supported in Windows unless if there's a way. I believe so, because there's always a way to everything. And then you have Java 17. Then if you scroll down, you will see that we have Java 8 and we have Java 11. So I am currently using Java 11, which is the version that I'll be using. I'll advise that you get this, not that it's a must that you get this. Even if you're using Java 18 or Java 17, just bear in mind of what's on, but I think it should be sorted. Yeah, you can use Java 18. Definitely, you can use Java 18. So yeah, it's better because the thing is with this one, you see it's locked, so you might have to sign in or sign up or that. Yeah, which might be way too much because it's mostly you don't want to just unless if it just wants an email it's fine, but then if it wants credit cards and all that, then no, and it's a no. So be mindful of that. Then if you're that person that just loves reading and you just wanna install it by yourself, well, these are the instructions which you can just go for. Yeah, make your life easy and yeah, enjoy. I do hope you guys will be able to install, and well, for this tutorial you don't have to worry about installation. You will be able to follow through this because I decided that instead of using my PC or my Java tools installed on my PC, I'm just gonna go and use the online tools because there are lots of resources online which you can use to learn, so you don't have to strictly have to install Java to get started. You can just go online and get the tool that you want and then you start coding. It's simple. Cool, because the other thing which I want to avoid is I am more of a terminal guy. I love working on terminal, so even my coding style is not based on IDE but it's based on a text editor. Well, my favorite text editor is Vim. You will see why I love Vim as we move forward in these tutorials, but for now let's not talk about that, right? Yeah, one thing to notice as well, you saw that you have tools and resources, right? You can just go there. Let's give it a moment or two to load. There we go, and then you just go access or read about the Java development kit and Java run environment out there. Because yeah, once you install Java development kit, you might also need to install the Java runtime environment. So yeah, that's why I say go online and follow the instructions they have online, seeing someone installing. But first watch how they do it, and then after that you can just repeat the video and follow through to make things easy. Then Java archive, you can just explore all those options that you have there. but I don't want to spend too much time there. But yeah, there you go. So they give you a bit of warnings, all that, previous Java releases, all that. So yeah, you can just go and check them out and see what changed, right? And then if you want tutorials, there are the tutorials, but I will get to this part when you get to yeah, when you get to learn, we'll get to learn all these things. So yeah, let's not be distracted and get back to our tutorial. Cool. So yeah, okay, there we go. So here we start. I do hope you guys are ready, and I will try to not be too fast so that everybody can follow through, right? So we're going to talk about variables, right? This is one of the fundamental concepts you need because you'll be working with data each and every time, right? And then that data has to be stored somewhere. So you're going to be storing this data in a variable, and then you can use that variable as in any way you want. You can use it in a condition, all that, but we're going to talk about conditions in the next tutorial, not this tutorial, right? So what is a variable? So a variable or variables are containers for storing data. As I mentioned, that you're going to be storing data on a variable, right? So these are containers for storing your data. Excuse me. So declaring a variable, right? I am gonna just break down the syntax for declaring a variable. It's not complicated, and worry less about what you might not know from this declaration. It's gonna be broken down and be explained as you move further and further. But in this tutorial, you will know everything you need to know about variables. Cool. So let's check out the syntax, right? So you start by defining the data type, which I mentioned during the content that I'm going to be the discussion of variables. One way or the other, it leads us to the discussion of data types. I'm going to explain the different data types, but for now, just know that whenever you declare a variable, you start by defining the data type. So it's the data type, is the type of data that this variable is going to be storing, right? And then you're going to follow through with the name. As I mentioned, I will be discussing the naming rules. For now, we're just going through the syntax, and then we're going to break it down, right? So we're going to start by discussing the rules of naming your variable. Then once we're done, we're gonna go and discuss the data types, and then it's gonna be followed by an equal sign, as most people know it by, but in coding this is none other than an assignment operator. What it does is it assigns a value to a variable or to something, right? In this case, we're gonna assign a variable value to our variable. That is the syntax. I hope everybody gets to see this, everybody is understanding this, and what else, we're going to be demonstrating this. So for now, we're just going through the syntax, right? Cool. Now let's discuss the rules for naming variables, right? So the first rule is that your variable can begin with a letter, right? I.e., it's an alphabet from A to Z. It can be an uppercase, it can be a lowercase, it doesn't matter, as long as it's a letter from A to Z. Your variable can start with it, right? You can also begin with a dollar sign, i.e., there you go. Everybody that sees that dollar, they're like, mula mula. Cool. That's the rule. So you can begin, so your variable can either begin with any letter from A to Z, or you can choose to start your variable name with a dollar sign. Comprandi? Yes, comprandi. And then we gonna also, you can begin naming your variable with an underscore, and then there's an underscore there, right? Then it can contain number, right? It can contain, not contains, I made a mistake there, I didn't say that, but it can contain numbers, any number from 0 to 10, or any number that can be made with the numbers from 0 to 10, right? Then you must be mindful of case sensitivity. So these variable names are case sensitive. If maybe you create a variable, let's just take the word rules, right? And then I also create another variable with the rules, it's rules, but then with the small letter r. These two variables are different, right? So if you assign a variable to rules with the capital letter, and then you create another variable that is small letter rules, and then you try to access, or let's just say that you create a variable rules with capital letter, right? And then you assign a value to that variable, but then when you wanna print or display the content or the contents of that variable, and you use the one with the small characters, you will get an error if that variable is not defined, because you're trying to access, or you're trying to access contents of a variable that doesn't exist. Cool. We will explore all this from the coding side. I think we're gonna just head over there now once we're done with the discussion of the rules that exist in terms of naming, as long as variables are concerned, right? I will break it down that way just to make it simple, because it does get complicated, and if one gets to talk too much and not cover some parts, it gets to be confusing. So talk about something, and then we're gonna go and interpret it in code. That way it will make it easy, and then these rules will become easy as to, oh, this is it, I see. Cool. What else? And then one other thing is that you cannot contain white spaces in your variables. So when you have a variable, you can't have spaces in between. So if you have 3 or 4 words in your variable, either join them with an underscore, or just use a different, okay, I will discuss a bit of the naming rules, or the naming styles you get to have. I think this is the last one where you can't name your variable same as keywords. So in any programming language, there are a set of reserved words with special purpose, or special mission, or special functions, right? So they do something. So you can't name your variable names as same as these reserved words. Normally these reserved words, when you type, right, you will see that the normal text is this text, but they get to have a special color, so you will know that, no, I'm naming my variable with a wrong name. Cool. So let's just explore what we just learned. As I've mentioned, I'm just gonna use the online tool rather than just using the tools that I have, because it might be confusing. So I will use my tools as tutorials go further, but for now I just want to show you how you can actually get started coding online. So I'm gonna go to jdoodle.com. I think that's the website, jdoodle.com. That's where you get your compiler, right? As you see, okay, got it. Cool. You can also use this site to learn if you want. You can go to courses and assignments, and online tests or interviews, or recruitment, auto evaluation, and score. You can just go there and explore. Yeah, so these are the languages you have, and those are the compilers you get to have, right? So we are on Java, so we're gonna select Java. So we're just gonna go to Java, right? If you are on Python, you go Python 2, PHP, all that. There's this language. I didn't really understand it at first. I didn't really know about it until someone else told me that there's a language called brainfuck. I was like, what? There's a language called brainfuck. Wow, I was like, ooh. But cool. Let's go to Java. Cool, right? So we're gonna go to Java, and this is a compiler, right? But then this side is not so nice. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna go to a full mode. Now this is much better, right? So this side, that's where we'll be coding. Let's just remove that because we don't need that. So this is where we're going to be coding, right? This side, this is where you get to have your input. If you have command line arguments, you will use this, but this we're not going to use in this tutorial, but then in future tutorials we'll be discussing about the command line arguments. So we're going to take it step by step. All right, so for now it's just an interactive so interactive is where you just use command line language, so we're not going to use that, right? So on to the version. You will recall that I mentioned that you can either install Java Development Kit 18 or 17 or 11. I'm currently using 11, so I'm just going to stick with just 11 just so that all these tutorials are consistent with the version that I'm using. But you can also use 18 because everything that is there on 11 is there, unless if they changed something. But it's safe to just use 11. But then if you can't access 11, just use 18. And then if you encounter problems with one of the tutorials we get to do, just let me know and I will get to look at it and see what changed. And then yeah, cover it in such a way that it will make sense. I do hope that that makes sense. Cool. So let's get started, right? So it's variables, right? As I mentioned, I am gonna be I will give you the I'll give you the structure, right? You see what they have there? This is the whole thing, right? But let's just not use that. Let's just start it from scratch. So I have a class, say this is class Java. Cool. And then you're gonna have this, right? So this is just you setting up your environment for coding. I will explain what a class is, how to define a class, and we're going to also be discussing all the other things, because the thing is, if I discuss the class, then I also have to discuss the access modifiers on how accessible you want your class to be. Do you want it to be private, public? We'll discuss all that as time goes on. For now, we're just going to define a simple class. This is more of a format that you need, and then inside, that's where we're going to be applying what we just learned in this tutorial. So this is going to be covered in future tutorials, right? So your program always have this. It's public static void main. Like I said, please worry less about this. We'll discuss this in future tutorials, because if I started with this, believe me, most people were just going to be like, no, coding is not for me. So this is the format, or this is the template that you need. So this is the template that you need to start coding. In Python, you can just start coding print hello world and then you're done. In this one, you have to set it up like this before you can start coding. And we can just test it out and see. So okay, let me go back a bit. So I mentioned that we'll talk about the input and output at a later stage, right? So it's better if I get to do that later than doing it now, because if I do it now, it will cause confusion. So in this case, say we have whatever data type we have, right? We're not going to focus on that, but we're going to focus on the naming of a variable. But then in order for us to name a variable, we need the data type. So we start by defining the data type that the variable is going to be holding, the type of data that is going to be storing, right? So I think let's go finish up the data type discussion, then we can start coding. Because if we start with just coding without understanding data types, we will find ourselves in trouble. Cool. Let's take a step back to the slides and we discuss that for now. Wait, I'm not sharing. Sorry, so I have to present my slides, that's all. Cool. So let's discuss data types. I hope no one is lost yet. I'm glad I didn't just go through with just studying coding without discussing this, because most of the people, especially the new guys, were gonna be confused as to what's happening. But then what we just did for now is we've set up an environment for us to code, right? If you want, you can just go and start, not really, okay, it's cramming for now, but then it will be more like practicing the syntax. This is what I always have, for this is how I set up my environment for coding. You can just do that to make it easy, because at the end of the day you want to be able to start a code from scratch without referencing anything. The online resources are there to help you with some parts or some things which are more complicated, so you don't have to go there. Imagine you go online, how do you set up your coding environment? That's too much. That's too much. So you have to know how to start a program from scratch, right? So it might be a good thing to actually start that. I will revise that. Okay, I will restart the coding side. So we're gonna go there as if we didn't do any of what we did just now. I will delete that when we get there. So cool. So we have data types. As I've mentioned, I'm not going to talk about all of them, because if I start talking about all of them, it's just going to be confusing. So I'm going to be taking it step by step. But then in this tutorial, we'll cover the ones that we use the most. So starting with the text type. So in a text type, we have a string. So what a string is a sequence of characters, right? So it's you organizing your alphabets from A to Z to come up with a word that makes sense, or a sentence that makes sense. So that's the sequence of those characters, right? And then we have a second type, which is a char. I know most people will be like, is a char a text type? Yes, it is a text type, right? So this is strings of ASCII characters, and we'll discuss the ASCII characters later on, because they're gonna form part of something that we're gonna be using, especially when it comes to conditions that we get to make. For instance, you can compare two characters and see which one is greater than the other one. Reason being that each and every character has a value or integer value assigned to it. So when you compare these two characters, you're not comparing A with B, but comparing the values that are stored for characters A and B. But don't worry, we're going to get to that at a later stage. For now, I'm just going to keep it simple and not go too much. Cool. And then I will talk about the numeric type, right? So this is a different type. So we have a text type in our data types, right? And then it's divided into two categories. We have a string and then we have a char. Same as numeric type, there's categories as well. First one being the integers. I'm sure you guys know this one. So these are whole numbers without decimals, right? That's the integer type. And then we go to floats. So these are numbers with decimals. I hope you guys can follow through that, right? And then we're gonna talk about the binary type. So this guy, he's one of the important guys as well. Because for instance, okay, let me not talk too much about the future content, because the thing is, I'm so excited in such a way that I'm tempted to talk about things we're going to be discussing in the future, because it just can't wait. I don't know, but let me just keep calm, keep down, and not try to go too far. Binary type, right? So this is a boolean, that's what we have. So this is just a data type with two possible values. So you can either have true or false. So true in some instances is represented as 1, false as 0. That's the case. So the bit for true is 1 and the bit for false is 0. Again, we'll discuss about the bits, because all these data types, right? Okay, we get to have two categories for data types. For now, I just mixed them. I didn't actually separate them in such a way that I discuss the primitive data types and non-primitive data types. But we will get to that part. We discuss the different data types. Okay, the primitive data type, this is what's happening. Non-primitive, this is this. We're gonna talk about that. For now, let's just discuss data types and just keep it there. Since now we know data types, we can now head over to our coding side and start coding, right? Cool. As I've said, we're gonna reset that from scratch. Cool. Sorry about this, I wasn't supposed to open this. Cool. So we're gonna start all over again. So this is you setting up, right? So you just type class and then the name of your class. That name has to be in caps. The first character, it must start with a capital letter, just like when you start with your name, right? You can even write a class named after your name. So I'm just choosing Java for this one. Then you're gonna have that, right? And then you're gonna write public static void main, and then you're gonna have that, and then you're gonna have string args, right? And then you're gonna have this. So that's the setup, right? So you need a class. Inside a class you need a method, but what else, we'll talk about this. For now I want to talk about what happens inside, because that's what we know. So basically we're starting from the inside and then we're going to go to the outside as to how the outside functions, or understanding the outside. For now we're just inside, and then we can start coding, right? So to define a variable, you have a data type, right? So we started discussing a string, right? So with a string, the keyword for that data type is a string. As you see, it's highlighted. It's a data type of a string, right? And then it starts with a capital letter S. Just be careful. Most cases or most languages, all keywords are in lower cases. In Java, some are in upper cases, just as string. Reason being that this data type, it's a class. That's why I said I will have a discussion of class later on, because all things are going to start to make sense. For now, just know that you have a data type called a string. It is used to hold or to store text, right? And then you have a name, right? So with the name, according to the rules, we can start with any letter from A to Z. It can be A, it can be Z, right? Or you can start with a $sign, a mula, right? Or you can start with an underscore. That's it. If you start with this, it's illegal. You can't start with a number, but your variable can contain numbers. So let's just initialize a valid name, right? Or the legal way of defining or declaring a variable. So let's just call this name, and then we are assigning the text, right? So if it's a string, especially you guys who are from Java, please pay attention. So if it's a string, it has to be encoded in double quote. In Python, you do have a way of just using double quote or single quote. In this case, that's not the case. That one is used for a specific data type that we'll be discussing as well. So in this case, it's just a string, right? And then you use double quote. So you're going to have open quotes. So those are your double quotes, right? And then inside, you can start typing whatever, right? That's your screen. So say what? Java is easy. Someone will be like, this guy is calling Java easy. Yes, Java is easy. I mean, it takes time to learn something, but then once you learn something, you will be able to apply it with confidence and easy, right? Cool. And then each and every statement that you execute in Java, you end with a semicolon. Is everybody still with me? I believe you're still with me. So let's execute this and see if it's gonna execute. Okay. So this compiler of ours, it's a good thing I started here than using my Vim, because on my Vim we're gonna execute. This compiler needs public classes, right? So I have to use an access modifier called public. Cool. Then let's run it again and see. Yeah, it executed perfectly. We don't say anything yet because we're not printing anything, but it executed perfectly. So I will talk about this wireless. So this is the official structure. I know I started with just class, right? But that's how you normally start, and then from there you start discussing about access modifiers, which we'll discuss in the future tutorial. So that's how you define a variable, right? Say you start with an underscore, right? Let's execute. You see, it executes, right? Does it say a message? Oh, it just say executed. Okay, cool. So you can also do this, you see there, and then just move this a bit there so that you have a nice environment and you see what's happening. This is where you're going to see your output. This is where you're going to be coding, right? So you can start with an underscore. Let's check. If we start with the $, we execute. It executed. But then what happens if I start declaring my variable using a number first? So if I do that, I should get an error. Exactly. And then you will see this thing pointing that you can't start with a number, right? And then it also points with the wrong part, right? So, and this is one of the things that normally happens when it comes to coding, right? The error, where you get the error, right? You get this error according to the compiler gets confused in such a way that it thinks, or it expected you to have it's expected you to have a semicolon, but you already have a semicolon. The only problem is just these two, but these two created two errors. It's just one. So you have to be careful of your naming of variables, because if you name your variable illegally and then you get to check the errors, you might think, maybe this is supposed to be smaller or lower cases. That's not true. If you do that, you will be creating more problems for yourself. So be sure to make sure you understand the naming rules for your variables. It can start with any letter from A to Z, or you can start with an underscore, or you can start with a $. That's the only way that you can start a variable. A number, well, you can include a number in your variable right after the first character. It will be fine, right? You should be fine. Cool. So enough with that. Please do explore with other ones as well, in terms of legal ways of declaring variables and illegal ways of declaring variables. Once you master that, it's going to become easy for you to understand most of the concepts. Cool. Now let's head over to the second data type of a string. So in Java, there is a way of adding comments, right? I want to add comments so that this makes sense, or this is easy to follow, right? So a slash it's a comment, right? And then you will see that it's in green. So whatever that you see in green, if you're using this online compiler, it's going to be a comment. So this is a string data type, or text data type, should I say, text types, right? So for now we're just discussing text type, which we have the other one called char, right? So you see this is in lower cases. So the format is the data type, then the name of your variable. So in this case, we're just going to be letter, right? And then an assignment operator. Then you can just use a space to make your code easy, but you can also start coding there without a space, but it's easier to just have a space to keep your code simple and easy to understand. And then the way you define that, you use single quotes. That's why I said that you have to be careful, especially the Python guys, because in Python you only have you don't have a char type, you have a string. You get chars through indexing, but then that's just Python. We're not on Python, we're on Java, right? So it's a single code, and then you can start put any alphabet, right? It's only one alphabet, not more than one alphabet, right? And then it's a semicolon. We execute this, it should be fine. So what happens if I put HH? I get to have a problem, right? It's only one character that you put there, right? That's why it's a single quote, single character. I think that is easy to understand or easy to remember, right? And then we'll talk about the numeric type, right? So with this one, we have integers and we have floats. Floating is divided into other categories, but we'll talk about that later, not in this tutorial. We just want to keep it simple and not make it too much, right? So integers, the data type or the keyword for declaring an integer data type is int, which is an int, right? Integer, int. So it's a shortcut for integer, int, right? And then you have a number, and then you can just provide any number from one, any number that doesn't have a decimal, right? Then if you execute, it should execute. Then you sort it. I know you're not seeing anything, but as long as there's no error, there's no message that you're seeing there, your code is executing perfectly fine and you sort it, right? So don't be surprised. We're going to talk about the input and output, which gets to play a role from this for this part and this part in this case. And then we're going to talk about float, right? So that's the key float, and then let's just name it decimal, and then 60.98, right? And then it's a semicolon. That's how you define a float data type. And then if we run this, we get an error, right? Incompatible data types from double to float, right? Decimal. So when you declare a float in Java, right, you don't just declare it and just give it just a value with decimals, right? You have to specify that this is a float, because there's another data type which is double. We're gonna talk about, actually we can talk about it now, because with this one it is okay, no, let's not talk about this now, we'll talk about it later on. So when you declare a float, you declare a number, and then after that you can put f, a small f, or a capital letter F. Let's run this and see. There we go. It's capital letter F or a small f for float, right? But then there's another type of double. I think we can just include it. It's not bad, because the thing is, the difference between these two types is that the other one can have many decimals than the other one, and then double is the one that is mostly used. So let's just also include it here as well. I know I didn't discuss about it on the slides, but then as we are coding, I'm remembering that no, man, there's double as well. Also, the error did help me or remind me, because you need to have that. So when you declare a float, right, if you're using a float and you don't have many decimals, say you want, or your decimals or the decimals you're dealing with is less than 15, I think, then it should be fine. 15 or 7, okay, we'll talk about that later on. I didn't plan for that, but in this case we're just going to talk about it, right? So you have a double data type. So with that one, you're going to use the keyword double, and then you have double, and then it's number. You just saw what we did there. If you define your variable like this, it will be wrong. It has to have a different color. So in this case, the normal text is white, and then the keywords are okay, that color. I wanted to say something, but yeah, I know myself, sometimes I get to mess up when it comes to colors, but I'm pretty much sure that that's okay. Let me not say it. Let me not say it. So you define that maybe it's 99.67 what, and then you have to specify a D, either a small letter or a capital letter, right? And then you execute, then you're fine, right? That's all numeric types, right? Let's talk about that last type, which is a binary type. So in this type, what we have is we have a boolean, right? So the way you define that is boolean. I know the guys from C or C++ might be thinking, how is it not boolean? That's just a bit of a difference between this and, but then for C, don't worry, we'll get to that when we get to C and C++. For now, this is just Java. So it's a boolean, and then you have a variable name. Let's just call it status, then assignment operator. So a boolean can either have two types, can either have two values, right? Either true or false. In this case, we're just gonna use true, right? That's that. So this is our discussion of data types. I do hope you guys understood. If this was a bit confusing, do take time, pause this tutorial and then practice and practice and practice, and reach a point where you're able to do it by yourself. Just start this whole thing by yourself without referring to anything. I'm not promoting cramming. Cramming is not good because it always catch up with you, because if you don't know your stuff, trust me, you will be in trouble. So make sure that you master the concepts that you learn. Cool. Now let's head over to our slides and discuss what comes next. Cool. So now that we've discussed about variables, declaring them, now let's talk about how we can display those variables. But really, you can display anything, right? But in this case, we're just going to be displaying those variables. But then if you want, I will show you some of the things you can go around and play around with, because you can always create your own application with your own preferences and your own messages. You don't have to be limited to just variables. Those variables, you will use them along with the messages that you have. We're going to do that now. Cool. So to display data, we're going to use a different method. So Java, hey, why am I saying Python? Java has 3 methods, right? I think it might be more than this, but in this case, we're just going to discuss 3 methods, as I've mentioned, of which 2 you have seen from a different programming language. If you haven't, you will see it. If you're willing to also learn other languages, you will see one in Python, you will see one in C. Cool. It's also there in C++, but it started in C. So the first one is println. So this is in Java, right? It's a println method, right? What it does is it prints whatever that you want it to print, and then it moves the cursor to the next line. We'll demonstrate that on the code. And then we have a print method. So what this one does, it prints and it doesn't move the cursor to the next line. It stays on the same line. And then we have printf. Well, this method, it prints, but it doesn't go to the next line as well. But it's f, that f is for format, so it's for formatting, right? It introduces, or it makes use of this what do they call them again? Specifiers. It introduces specifiers, which we're going to be discussing. So that specifying the data type. So you specify the data type before you print. If you just print the data type, you're not going to print, it's not going to print anything, because it doesn't know which data type it's to print. So that's why they say C, it's a bit tough, because yeah, you don't just print stuff, you get to understand, oh, this is what I want to print with this print statement. This is what I want to print with this print statement. Understand? Cool. So before we head over to the input, let's go to the go to the coding side. Cool. Coding side. Okay. There we go. So this is where we left off, right? Now, displaying information, right? We discussed 3 methods. I'm gonna be discussing those methods, right? Displaying, information, right? This is what we have. Cool. So to display information, right, there is a class. Like I said, we'll talk about classes later on. For now, we're just going to be using these classes, right? So think of these as a format for displaying information. So you have a class. So this class is called system. Each and every class starts with the capital letter, right? And then you will see that it's highlighted, right? It's more of a keyword because it's a class. And then if you might have noticed, also a string is a class, and then you have system, it's a class. So they have, it's dark purple, I think. Don't laugh at me, I'm just not that good with colors sometimes. Yeah, but this one is a bit dark from this color, right? That one is a light pink. This one is, oh, that's pink, that's purple, I think. Yeah, I think I got this. Cool. Then inside this system you have a member called out. We'll talk about this, don't worry much about it. Then that's where we're going to access the methods, right? So think of this as a format or the way to access the container that has all those other methods, right? And in this case, we're going to start using the first one, which is println. Println, right? And then you have this. So the messages I was talking about comes into play now. Cool. So what you have is you have message, right? And then you just wanna say you wanna display name. Then you have a colon, right? That's how you display it. Then what you're gonna do is you're gonna use the plus sign. So this is me adding a string to a string. So you can add strings with strings. You can perform string addition or string concatenation, but we'll talk about this later on because a string is a class with different other methods. So we'll talk about this. So wireless about some of the concept you don't understand, but I just want to give you a bit of something to play around, as you get yourself familiar with all these concepts so that it becomes easy for you to follow, right? So what I'm gonna do now is I am gonna add. So what I'm gonna add is the name of the variable, right? So I want to display name, right? I want to display name. So I just call the variable name and then I close with the semicolon. That's how you access the println method. This we'll discuss in the future tutorials because it's a bit more complex and you have to understand the class first before we get to discuss this. So we'll discuss classes and how to create methods inside that class, members, all that. We'll discuss that. Cool. So what we're going to do now is just execute and then we'll see what happens. When you execute, this is the text that is printed, right? So it's name, you see it's name, right? With the semicolon. This is this part. And then Java is easy, is the value that is stored in that variable. So I used the variable to access the contents. So when I say name, it's displaying the contents of the variable and not the name, right? Let's try this one more time with the char character, right? So we have 3 methods, right, for displaying. I'm going to use println for the text type, and then I'm going to use print for the numeric type, and then we're going to use binary. Oh wait, let's just let's mix them up. So let me print the boolean type, right? The boolean type. System dot out dot println. and then we have status, and then we have status, right? Then we have status. So I'm expecting status, then true, right? Because I assigned true to that value. And there we go. And then you will see that this line is printing right after the first line, right? So we used print method for that one, right? So this is print method, print line method. Now let's use a different method, which is print method. Cool. So it's the same class, system, same member, and then inside we're just going to use print. So with print, I can see number, right? Okay, let's just go with letter. And then in Python we could just simply do this, right? We don't have a space there, and then we have a comma, and then it's a variable name. Let's try it out. If you don't know Python, don't worry, you can just follow through what we're doing now, because it's gonna make it easy for you when you get to learn Python, if you're gonna learn Python. And then we have a problem, so it doesn't work like that, so let's forget about it. Let's forget about it. Or the other thing that you must not be afraid of is getting errors. Errors is part of learning, so you don't just learn things and understand them same time. It takes time to understand them, so don't be disencouraged by getting errors. Errors are part of you now as you are starting to be a programmer, right? Cool. So let's run this and see. There we go. You have age. So this one doesn't support how the Python, but then also the Python one did had a bit of rules, but let's forget about Python. Forget I mentioned Python. Like I said, I'm just a guy that just loves coding way too much, and I'm thinking about Python because I'm also doing tutorial for Python, which is gonna be up Monday, so that's why I'm. But yeah, let's forget about that. Let's just follow what we have. So for now, we're gonna be using plus sign. So you have the message that you wanna present, right? And then you have the variable name, and that's what you're doing, right? Then let's say we wanna print a number, right? It's system dot out dot print. Then what we have there is a number, right? Number colon, then we're gonna be adding number, right? This is this, right? So if we execute this, I forgot this. Like I said, embrace your errors. Mistakes do happen. If you don't make mistakes, then I don't know, but as people who do make mistakes. Cool. Now you see that there's this thing, right? It is number, right? But then letter is there, and then immediately after that the keys that didn't go to the next line, it was in the same line, so the print started printing that, right? So in order to get rid of that, you can just do this. So we want to add a next line, right? So it's double quote, and then you have an escape character. I will discuss the escape characters in full details, but for now I'm just going to introduce just one, which is used for ending a line. So you get to have a bit of work in terms of working through these concepts before our next tutorial, which is going to be on Friday, right? So this makes it easy for you to get to learn. So by the time you get to Friday, you already did something and you already introduced yourself to coding, so it makes it easy. So if we execute, now we have so what happened is it added an end line, but it didn't end line, right? So we placed our end line in the wrong place. So that's one of the things that you get to do. Exploring, it's one thing that I would say you should do, because exploring is it's you learning, because without failing you don't really get to go far, right? So let's try doing this and see what happens. And then we have it. There it is, 50. Let's go back and add this. Wow, I didn't say that. There we go. I was right. I'm thinking too much about the printf method. Cool. So what we did is we printed letter and then the number, right? So this gave us that part. But now the keysar was still there, right? We want to move that keysar down there. To do that, we used an escape character, right? So initially I came to number, so it was coming to number and then moved the keysar down there. But that's not where we wanted the keysar to go down. We wanted it to go down from that side to the side, right? And then once you're done, of course you don't want things to continue happening on that side. So you do the same thing and you use this. So from this already you can see why mostly we use this and not this. This is way too much work because you have to have that. Unless if you want to do a bit of a format where you have a name, then a space, and then another variable, or that maybe you're creating a table. So yeah, you get to use this. So these methods get to be used under certain conditions, right? So now let's explore the printf method. So with the printf method, it's the same thing. It's system.out.printf, right? And then what you have is you have a specifier, right? So this specifier specifies the type that you're dealing with. So if I'm having a float, I use the percentage. I think it's gonna be f. Then just like, okay, let me not rush too much. So is that, and then I go and I say decimal, and then I put a space, right? There we go. So it's a float, so it does print. This is what I printed, right? But then let's just say that I just went straight and just printed this without specifying that. Now it has a problem. You didn't specify what type it's supposed to print, so it's confused. It throws an error, right? So you see how this methods gets to be complicated. This one, it's way too nice and simple. It doesn't complicate things. This goes there a bit, but not that much. And then this is on another level. Well, those who are from C or those who tried C will tell you that, yeah, that's why C is considered the most difficult language, because yeah, there you have to follow rules. You have to know who, you have to know everything, right? So you specify, so it's a percentage sign, and then you specify, right, since it's a decimal, it's F, right? And then a comma, right? And then you have that. But then you also want to print something, right? So this is going to be printed, right? So since I say I have a decimal, that, and then I have a space, right? If I run this, if you execute this, see what it does. It's that, and then you have the number. But then if you put decimal after, say we just put random text there, see what happens. It comes after. So if I was to put decimal after my specifier, it was going to be printed down. It was going to be printed after, right? Which is not something that we want. Comprende? Yes, comprende. Cool. I think for this one, let's include all variables because it's specifiers. Okay, for the variables that we learned, we'll talk about others later. Okay, cool. So let's start with the name. name it a string, so it's a small s, small character s, let me just say it that way. And then this one also doesn't end line, right? So you saw that at the end you can put that, so we're gonna put the end line there, right? I know it gets confusing, but don't worry, we're not going to be working much on this, but this we're going to get to where it's appropriate at, but this is more than enough on our case, because we can manipulate this to do what we want to do. For instance, just make another line, make another text being printed there. But I'm just covering these other ones for the people that want to explore, for the people that are going to also learn C. So you will be able to get there. If you're in Python, it's the same thing, right? Cool. And then we end line, and then we provide name, and it's a semicolon, and then it's system dot out dot print f. Why am I doing print line? And then it's a char, right? So it's name or it's a letter, and then it's a percentage, and then it's a C because it's a char, and then you end line. Cool, we're done with the first ones, and then we're gonna go to the second one, system dot out dot printf. And then what we have there is we have an integer, right? So it's d, and then it's n line, right? And then we just have the say number, there we go. Then we have number. Cool. Just for homework, finish up the remaining one. So yeah, just go learn about the remaining ones. It will make it easy for you to also get familiar with that. As for learning, just go learn them. Yeah, so you have a float. So a float we did is an f. Double is gonna be something else. It's gonna be an f as well. You can try it out. Okay, go try it out, and then when we start next time, we're gonna finish there, right? Because I want to finish up something else which is a bit complicated, and if I continue complicated, we're going to end up being confused. So let's avoid that. So let's go. Oh, it's just one last slide and that's it. Cool. There we go. Let's do the last part, which is getting the input, right? So now this might be a bit confusing, but as I mentioned again, don't worry much about the classes. We're going to be discussing classes properly, right? So you need a class named scanner to get the input, right? So getting input, it's you getting the input from the user, right? So you want the user to type something, and then you store whatever that they type in a variable. So you're going to need a class which is called a scanner. Then let's just check the syntax, right? So the syntax is you call the name of the class, which is scanner, and then you name it any variable. So it's like declaring a variable, but this is different. It's properly known as creating an object of a class, right? But we'll talk about this later, not now. For now, let's just get the more of just a formula. Then that way you know that, oh, I can declare a variable. I know the data types that I can store in my variable. Then I know how to display my data type, and I know how to get input and store that input to the appropriate data type. If it's an integer, I store it in an integer. If it's a float, I store it in a float. Does that make sense? I do hope it does, right? So it's input, and then you have an assignment operator, then you have a new keyword, and then you have scanner. I know this might be way too much, but let's just wrap it off here. We'll discuss more of this. Wireless, we'll discuss more of this because we're not going to also discuss all the methods for this scanner. But if you want, you can go and get yourself familiarized with the methods that exist. Then that way when you get there, it will be simple. So in this tutorial, we're only going to cover two methods, one for storing data on a string and then one for storing data in an integer. Let's just use integer. Cool. Then you have system dot in and then you close. So this is the format. Like I said, if you want, just go cram this as a format or a template. When you get to break it down, your understanding will be way more. Comprende? Yes, comprende. So we're going to be using this. So it's going to be this dot and then we're going to access the methods for reading the input, right? And I think that's it for our tutorial. And yeah, let's just go apply the theory. Cool. So as I mentioned, the first thing you need is a class. So you need a class called scanner, right? Let's just move this down. So you just move your keys, right, to there and then just gonna press enter to go up, to go down, right? So what we're gonna do is, I know this might be confusing and you might be way super confused, but if you can follow this tutorial, right, and get to do all the things that we are doing right now, wireless is gonna be made simple and understandable. Because right now what we want to do, we want to install a scanner from a package, right? So we use the keyword import and then from java package dot util dot scanner. That's what we want. I just imported the scanner. I will show you later on how to import. We'll do the import part, so don't worry much about what you don't understand. So if you run this, you have a printf or a string. Where's the string? There's the string. So we have a problem there with that one. It's printf. I forgot the t. So you see the mistakes we get to make. It's a good thing I executed this before anything because we were gonna have problems. So yeah, that's the whole thing. That's how it works, right? So yeah, just go finish up the other ones. Then yeah, when you get in the new tutorial, we'll finish up this. We'll definitely save this file. So this is how you save your file. I'm gonna save this file for next week, and then I'll open it on my text editor on my PC, right? Not using this, or we can just continue using this. It depends, but instead of just doing the same thing over and over, I will just keep in mind that we spoke a bit about specifiers, right? But then we'll discuss them in detail in the next video, and then it will make it easy to understand. Cool. So for now, we're dealing with this guy. So I was compiling just to say that we imported this guy properly, right? He's imported properly and our code is working without any errors. So I know that when we have any errors, it's what we're adding now. So this is getting input. So the format says that is the name of the class, right? It's scanner, and then you want to get the input. This you can name anything, or you can just name it user, and then an assignment operator, and then it's a new keyword, and then it's scanner, and then it's system dot in, then it's a semicolon. Don't worry much if you're seeing these not being highlighted, right? So these are the built-in classes. This one is the one that exists. You just have to import it, right? So that's why it's treated as a normal text like that. So wireless, it is a class. Cool. You can just execute this to see if everything is working perfectly fine before continuing, and everything is fine, right? So what we're going to do is we're just going to do two things, right? Store a string value, right? and then we're gonna store an integer value. That makes sense, right? String value and integer value, right? Cool. So now what we're gonna do now is with the string value, we're gonna define a string because you want to store that value in a string, right? Define a string. Let's call this Java, and then what you're gonna do is you're gonna use that object that you created. Forget about the concepts that I'm saying, because you're gonna learn in the future tutorials. That's why it wasn't really that easy for me to actually create these tutorials, because there are things you get to say before you actually understand. So with this one, there are some things you just have to know that they're supposed to be there before you actually fully understand them. Because if I was to go out and start explaining about classes, you are going to see Java as a language that is not easy to learn, and that's not the case. So it's user dot, then there's a method, right? So don't worry for it not showing here. I'm able to use this because I've been using Vim. So the thing about coding, right, is being able to use any tool that you have to code without being limited. It's one thing that makes you good. I'm not saying it's necessary, or it depends on what the kind of a coder that you want. Myself, I wanted to be that coder that you can just give me any computer right now with the tools that it has, and then I can start creating any program that I want. So I used Vim to train myself, so I can use either, let's say, an IDE. An IDE makes it simple. It's gonna give you all the methods that exist in that method. When it comes to a text editor, it doesn't. If you know your way around, it's simple. Cool. But what else, you get to decide what kind of a coder you want to be. Myself, I'm just a guy that loves working on terminal because it makes life simple and simple. Did you see the whole tutorial, right? There was no mess of many methods appearing. You know, when you get to teach people and then people are learning for the time and they think, so I have to know all those things. No. You see, just take it step by step. Make them understand that which you're teaching, and then by the end of the tutorial sessions, all those many items that you taught or that were appearing will be making sense, because they'll be understanding with just a small portion of it. Cool. This is the user. Then you're going to type next, and then it's a line with the capital letter, right? And then it's this. So this is going to store nextLIne on there, right? And then I just want to print that. So it's system.out.println. We're just going to use println for this one. Then what we want to do is we just want to say is Java, and then we use Java, right? Cool. Now if I execute this, I'm supposed to get an error, right? Then it's not because of that semicolon. So if you run it again, I should get another error. Why? Because I didn't provide the input. Normally would suggest, especially with terminal, or when you get to an IDE, you have to provide the input, right? So since I'm also including people that don't have any IDE, I wanna at least explain how this JDoodle works so that they can understand too, right? So I'm using this to make things easy to understand for others, right? I think I might continue using this without starting with my Vim. But in an IDE, you just write this, and then on your terminal, it will show you that, okay, now it wants the input, and then you provide the input. In this case, you provide the input there. If you've seen HackerRank, you will see that there is this portion. So you provide this portion. So HackerRank works more or less the same as this one. So you provide all the input and then it just goes. So this is going to be stored somewhere and being used as input. So you don't have to worry much about that. So what we're getting there is we're just getting the string, right? So let me just see Murex the coder, right? And then I execute. When you execute, that's your input. That's the input. And it's funny how you can move things around and type, which is weird. But yeah, that's the output, right? That's the output. So yeah, be careful with this one. You can edit the output. So for learning purposes, right, you can use this. But then as time goes on, you're gonna get the IDE, or you can get any other online compiler that you know of that is good. But this is just that. We will get to a part we'll do hacker ranks and all that, but not really all of them, but just show you how you go about solving a problem on HackerRank, because it's a bit tricky, but we'll do that at a later stages, not now. For now, we're just learning, because we have to learn first before we challenge ourselves, right? You have once you get the concepts, now you want to put those concepts into a test, and then you go and you practice, right? So cool. So that is getting the string value, and you store it in the string value, right? So you provide the data type. I know this might be confusing, but we're going to be doing lots of this later on. So let me just conclude this tutorial with the very last way of it. So you want to store a value, right? Say age, right? I'm going to use the object I created, user, right? And then it is a method. It's next, and then it's int with a capital letter I, right? And then I want to do the same thing, system.out.println. Println, right? So I'm just gonna, let me just add this on the next line to make it more simple to understand and more make it look nice. Cool. So what you have there is age, semicolon, then it's age, right? That's what you want, right? And then if you run this, we should get an error. See what happened? It ran. This is fine, but I didn't provide the input for this one, so I have to go there to the next line and provide my age. Now you see how this one works. So you first provide the input on the standard input, then when you execute, it will go and fetch that input, continue, second input, and continue. So if I run this now, it should be fine. And that's it, everybody. We'll discuss all the methods that we have for reading the input. So for output, we only discuss 3 inputs. We only discuss 3 methods, right? So input, we do have other methods. I just didn't want to make this a bit more complicated since it was an introductory video. But I do hope you guys loved this video, and if you did, leave a thumb up and subscribe if you haven't subscribed. And yeah, do hit that notification bell to not miss out on the tutorials that are gonna come, because it's gonna be fun. And yeah, if you are willing to learn, and if you are willing to become the coder that you've always wanted to become, well, you can do anything. I mean, in this world, there's no such thing as limits. You are the only one that can limit yourself, but you can do whatever you want to do in this world. So that's it from me, and I shall see you guys next week Friday. For now, do enjoy, and I do hope you guys are gonna enjoy learning all this. Do finish up these ones that we didn't finish, just so you get to learn, because the other part of this tutorial is not just me providing everything for you guys, but giving you a chance to also learn by yourself. Then by the way, by you getting to learn, you will get to grow and become independent. And once you become independent, well, you might not even need these videos anymore, but just learn but then the videos will give you something you don't know. So don't get to a part where you forget that you cannot always know everything. You get to learn. I also learn from other people. I'm still learning from other people. I even fully mastered Java. I'm at the level that I can say that I'm confident enough to explain the concepts, because yeah, I've been learning Java ever since I started last year. I learned through solo learn, I believe. Yeah, I just did solo learn certificates, and yeah, they gave me a good theory which I read. Then after that, I went to the victory schools. That's when I got to fully learn the concepts. Then I mastered Java, and then I was like, no, let me just challenge myself. So I went to Java Hackering. Woo! It was fun, but they had a question which was just way too tough for me to answer. I had to scratch my head until I pulled through. So yeah, it's a process. So getting to apply your concepts, especially with hackering. With hackering, you don't have to go to other tabs. I know people do go to other tabs and all that to get the certificate, but to be honest, I mean, hackering provides you with an opportunity to test your skill, right? So if you're testing your skill and you're being honest with yourself, you wouldn't just go and just search online for answers and all that. No, just do the exercise, do the challenge by yourself, and understand. If you fail, it's not the end of the world. You can redo it again. They give you another chance to redo it again and again and again. So you don't have to punish yourself, but just do what you must do. But that's it for me, guys, and yeah, have a lovely weekend.